We have two speakers today. The speakers have no personal, business, or financial conflicts of interest to report. Our first speaker is going to be Dr. Letha Mosley. She's an associate professor in the Department of Occupational Therapy at UCA. UCA has been one of our longtime and very loved partners. They do good stuff. She has taught courses in geriatrics, research, health conditions, and occupations. She's worked with clients across the lifespan and in a variety of practice settings. Her primary focus has been on occupational therapy in adult neurology, geriatrics, community-based practice for health promotion. She has over 25 years of experience facilitating cultural competence in allied health students, medical students, and practitioners, motivating individuals to provide equitable treatment to patients of diverse background.
Patient safety, and we're talking about CarFit today. And I appreciate the invitation to come. This is a joy of mine. Let me just give you a little bit of background in terms of how I became interested in this. My mother, in her early 80s, whenever I would go home to Oklahoma to visit her, she would always give me her car keys and let me drive. And I couldn't figure out, well, why is she being lazy? Well, one time I walked behind the car and I noticed that there were a lot of dents in the car. And so when I talked to her about it, she said, well, you know, it's hard for me to turn my head. So when I back out of the yard, what I do is just back up until I hit the fence. Then I know I need to turn and drive out the driveway. So she adapted what was going on with her in terms of her driving abilities because of limitations in her skills. So I thought, okay, I'll be your chauffeur. The objectives of this particular presentation are to understand the demographics of older adults as related to driving and traffic safety, as related to traffic and safety in the United States and Arkansas. We also want to distinguish between evaluation and education because a lot of people get confused about this being an evaluation program. It is not. It is an educational program related to community mobility. We also want to look at how CarFit was developed and the scope that it has nationally. And we'll focus primarily on the 12 areas of education related to the CarFit checklist, with looking at recommendations for how we can enhance patient safety. Then we'll look at a quick case scenario so that you can apply the information that you've learned related to the checklist as well as the recommendations. I'm really excited because this is also Older Driver Safety Awareness Week. And you see the key players in this particular program are AAA, AAA, AARP, and the American Occupational Therapy Association. If you look at any of these particular sites, they are offering free materials, educational materials, podcasts, and other self-assessments that you can actually use as an older adult or a parent or a friend of an older adult to assess your driving abilities, your knowledge, and to get discount on your insurances if you take particular education programs. So this coincides nicely with what the national organizations are doing to enhance driving for older adults. So what are the statistics? What are the numbers? If you look at 2003 to 2011, there was a decrease in the actual number of fatalities and injuries among older adults. But when we hit 2012, there's actually a slight increase in the fatalities and injuries of older adults who are 65 and over. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Department of Transportation, in 2012, there are almost 36 million older adults who are 65 and older with a driver's license. Think about that number of individuals going through some of these roundabouts that we now have. During 2012, 5,560 individuals were killed in motor vehicle crashes, and that was particularly related to incidents related to older adults. 214,000 were injured in those motor vehicle crashes, and the rate of crashes increased for those individuals who were in their 70s to 74 But the most significant increase in risk of fatalities and injuries were related to those individuals who were 85 or higher. So the older an individual became during 2012, the more miles they traveled, the higher risk they were for motor vehicle accidents, which could result in injury or fatalities. What does that mean for Arkansas? In Arkansas, drivers involved in fatal traffic crashes were a total of 734 in 2012, with 88 fatalities. And you can see the breakdown here of how the age groups performed. Those in the age group of 35 to 54 had the most injuries and accidents. Those who were 21 to 34 had 216, and those in the age group of 55 to 69 years old had 136. So you can see that even though older adults were not the highest in terms of traffic crashes and fatalities, they were above some of the teenagers and some of the younger groups. And this again is important to note, just because the numbers of drivers are how many? Over 36 million. When we look at older adults, we have to consider the fact that we change as we get older. When we get older, when I turned 40, my vision changed. I just had that reaching out thing where I had to adjust a lot. So with aging and with the accumulation of conditions, there are changes that influence driving, such as vision. How many of you have problems with glaring at night? So in the darkness, that becomes an issue. When I came here for treatment, one of my brothers, who is 72, was driving and it started to rain. All of a sudden, he had to pull over. It was too hazy, it was too gray, it was too difficult for him to actually see in that rain. So vision becomes an issue. Strength also becomes an issue, as well as coordination, active range of motion, and flexibility. As we age, especially if we have arthritis and some of those conditions, we tend to lose the flexibility of our head and neck, which influences our driving. We also have a change in functional mobility, getting in and out of the car. It's not as easy to get up these days when you turn 60 or 70 or 80 as it is in your teens and 20s. Another change would be hand function, both in terms of active motion as well as strength and coordination and manipulation. Speed of responses is also an issue in terms of reaction times. And then we have to look at cognitive decline. This is not consistent with everyone, but when you think about issues related to visual attention and paying attention to what's going on in your driving environment, it does become an issue as you age and have additional conditions that affect cognitive function. So when we look at how driving is influenced by age-related changes as well as conditions, we have to look at two components. The first component would be evaluation, and the other is education. And I just want to talk about evaluation as being a baseline and objective measure that is typically performed by a licensed professional. In that particular instance, there are standardized assessments, formal observations that take place that provide a measurement so that you can have a baseline of a person's performance. When you look at evaluation, you have the ability to self-assess, where clients will give their own report. And when my mother told me her situation, she actually was telling the truth. But you can't rely on self-assessment as being the total truth, especially if someone is fearful that you will take their keys away. So self-assessment is one mechanism. Family assessment is usually more reliable than the self-assessment. We have to evaluate their context. Are they living in the rural area, the city area? Are they living in the city? Are they having to drive during the day, during the night? Are they in a truck, a car? What are their contextual parameters? Then we look at their performance patterns. And when we look at performance patterns, we look at their habits and routines related to driving. Where do they go? How far do they have to drive? What times of day do they have to drive? Then looking at an activity analysis, doing a thorough analysis of everything from the beginning of the activity to the end. The activity being driving, getting in and out of the car, as well as getting to and from different sites. And then the final part of evaluation would look at client factors. With client factors, we're looking at things such as range of motion, coordination, strength, balance, vision, sensation, especially for individuals with diabetic neuropathy. So we have to look at all of those particular avenues and get a baseline measure of performance. In addition, we're looking at motor and process skills as well as communication and interaction skills. When we're driving, usually someone is driving with us if we have a family, and so there's that interaction that sometimes is distractive during the driving process. So we look at their ability to communicate with others as well as to interact with others while in the car. Then there is an off-road assessment as well as an on-road assessment, and I'll talk briefly about both of those, but part of the off-road assessment actually begins when you first see a client, looking at how they get in and out of a chair, looking at how they manipulate their wheelchair, looking at how they are mobile in those perspectives. And then the on-road assessment is actually through some closed driving patterns that people actually go through that are moved from simple to complex. In terms of education, education is more related to training and information sharing, which is what CarFit really is information sharing and training. With education, you have the self-help education where individuals are trying to teach themselves. You have organizations such as AARP, OTA, AAA that have programs and courses that are available for individuals to go through to improve to assess their knowledge and then improve it. And then you have specific training from occupational therapists and driving rehabilitation specialists who are designed to address problems associated with driving. Off-road assessments, and these are a couple that we offer at the University of Central Arkansas. The OT DORA, OT Driver Off-Road Assessment Battery, is one that looks across the board at all performance skills, provides a baseline, looks at things such as identification of signs, adherence to signs, giving the right-of-way or yielding, finding your way from point A to point Z in a simple manner as well as a complex manner. So that would be the OT DORA. We also look at things such as speed of process. Can you move your foot from the brake to the accelerator? Can you turn your neck? Can you move? And look over your shoulder. And then we have this wonderful, expensive driving simulator that we are now able to use to assess individuals' ability to manipulate on a rural area, city area, with pedestrians, with hazards, with snow, with ice. And it's really interesting because we can not only assess them, but we can train them how to accommodate for different problems that are identified within the assessment process. So, with CarFit, CarFit was initially started in 2005 by the American Geriatric Association, and they partnered with AOTA, AAA, and ARP, who actually developed the programs. They launched the program nationally in 2006. Since then, there have been over 50,000 individuals who have participated in CarFit nationwide and in some foreign countries. It's completely volunteer run, so it's not something that you would have to go to a clinic to actually receive as a service. It is community-based, education-based, and safety-focused. So the intent is for people to be educated on safety related to driving. And even though it's for older adults, we've had teenagers, 20-year-olds who have come through and learned a lot about being safe. It's offered in 3 delivery formats. First would be a public or private event, which is open to anyone to attend. You don't need to make an appointment, you just see the sign and you show up. The second way is a one-on-one appointment, so you can set up an appointment with a CarFit technician and occupational therapist for a one-on-one checklist, or in conjunction with AAA and ARP educational programs, which are planned ahead. Within the CarFit, there must be an OT or driver rehabilitation specialist who are involved in the actual event. In Arkansas, there is one CarFit instructor, and that person is the person who can train technicians, train event coordinators. That just happens to be me. So I'm recruiting other people to actually take on that responsibility as well. In terms of event coordinators, we have 14 in the state. Those event coordinators can become CarFit instructors because they've been through the training as a CarFit technician, they've been through a CarFit event, and they've been through developing or implementing a CarFit event. Since we started this, we have trained at least 400 OTs to become CarFit technicians. We've also trained laymen to become CarFit technicians. So in the state, there are people available to actually implement this program. What we've done is we've offered this through UCA as well as Baptist Health to OTA students, where we teach the students what it means to become a CarFit technician. So each year we're teaching about 50 students this program. What it takes is a lot of planning and coordination and setup, but regardless of that, the main focus of this is safety. So we look at safety from wearing these stinky orange jackets that we have to wear, to getting traffic cones, to dividing out the spaces, to making sure that there's plenty of space between cars so that everyone is safe when they actually go through the particular program. This is what CarFit looks like in terms of the overall setup. If you look at the blue car here, you enter in, and part of what you want to do if you're thinking about planning a CarFit event is looking at a place with a big space, an open parking lot. Churches, senior citizen centers, residential areas for seniors. So we've done several of those, and it's always good to have an entrance and an exit that are completely separate. You don't want people running into each other. Again, safety. So part of what you do is you have the entrance here, which is also an information place. Station 1 is check-in. Station 2 is check-up. Station 3 is check-out. And then you have the exit. We're here. Because we usually have so many participants and technicians, we have 2 lanes. So typically we'll have 2 stations for the checkup. That is where the 12-point checklist actually occurs. So that's where most of the activity takes place. Does that make sense? So in that first area, we have a "May I help you" location where they first come in in the entrance. That's where people will come in and they'll ask for directions or information. And we've had people come in and say, well, I'm lost, so where can I go? So whoever's at that station needs to be familiar with the area. So it's a greeter, someone who is directing people where to go, how to get there. If they're not here for CarFit, then we transfer them someplace else or send them or direct them to other places. We also encourage them to participate in the program. And in this particular location, the volunteers and the technicians are those individuals who implement this part of the CarFit. Check-in is also considered Station 1. In Station 1, this is where they sign a waiver form. We don't want them to hold us accountable for anything. Not that anything would happen, but we also get from them information about how they found out about CarFit and get a photo release so that we can use their pictures in presentations such as this. We get initial data about their car on the checklist, and we scan them for their safety belt use. My most interesting patient, or not patient, but person who came through CarFit said, yes, I use my seatbelt all the time, and her seatbelt was hanging out the door. So, which was really interesting. So the check-in station is to really get them started. They get their paperwork started, and they're scanned for the use of their seatbelt. Check up is the Station 2, and this is where we try to use humor and develop rapport with them so they're comfortable. They can discontinue the process at any time, so we really want them to be comfortable with this process. We begin the 12-point checklist, and on the checklist there are 3 options: yes, no, and check, our flag. So yes, meaning that they're in compliance or they're okay, no, that they're not doing it, or check is that there's an issue or question that might need to be addressed. So the person or the technicians who are actually reviewing the checklist will circle the check because that means it will be addressed at the end of the CarFit event. Throughout this process, as they're going through the 12-point checklist, they are sharing information and educating the clients about patient safety. It's important to note that even though they're educating and telling them a lot of information, the clients do not have to make changes. And any changes that are made, we direct them, but they have to make the changes physically themselves. So if there's an adjustment to the seat forward or back, the person has to make the change themselves. So we identify any issues that need to be addressed, and again, this has to be done by CarFit technicians. Check out is station 3, and this is the same as item 12 on the checklist. This is where we actually get the person to get physically out of the car, have them to walk around. We observe their performance and we look at issues that they may have. We also are giving them suggestions for things that they can resolve based on the checked items that were identified as concerns. We are also asking them to look at their car and scan their car. So they're looking at dinks and dents, and we're looking at some of their cognitive skills. This is also where we demonstrate equipment or techniques that we're making recommendations for. And we give any final education. We always leave them with a goodie bag. The goodie bag is really important because people like presents. So this station has to be done by someone who's an OT or driving rehabilitation specialist. So that's why it's really important to have those collaborators with you. So let's go through the checklist. In the materials that you received, there was a handout that actually consisted of the checklist. So we'll be using that, referring to that, as well as this PowerPoint. So item number 1, you're looking at, is the person the only driver? And you're encouraging the person to answer correctly, of course, but if there are multiple drivers, you want to encourage the other drivers to come through and the CarFit event as well, because there are adjustments that people make between drivers that sometimes will throw a person off in terms of safety. If you have a female and a male driver, there's a distance in height, so there's a difference in where the seat is located. So that is one of the first things that we want to know is, are you the only driver? And if so, good, then we'll have you go through the checklist. If not, then we would encourage you to get your family members or other drivers to participate. The second deals with the safety belt. Are they wearing the safety belt or not? And then they're looking at the location of the safety belt. How many of you have seen people driving with the shoulder strap behind the shoulder? Yeah. Are the hip belt actually over the abdomen or stomach? In addition to looking at the location of the belt, we're also looking for manipulation. Can the person reach up and grab the belt and pull it down? Can they manipulate and buckle the belt? Put it in the safety belt and release it. Also looking at comfort with older adults, sometimes there is some discomfort in terms of the pressure of the belt on the chest. And then we're taking the initial measurements in terms of looking at the distance of the chest to the steering wheel, which should be about 10 inches, and then the line of sight, which should be about 3 inches over the steering wheel. I know some of you have seen older adults who are kind of scrunched down and you can't see them over the wheel. There should be about 3 inches of line of sight over the steering wheel. The third thing that we're looking for is the steering column and how the steering column and the airbag are positioned and aligned in relationship to the person. Is the tilt proper so that the pressure of the back comes towards the face or the chest area? So we're looking to view them from their current position. We're also looking at their hand positions on the wheel and looking again for their distance between the steering wheel and the chest. The fourth item that we look at is the head restraint. And we always call it a head rest. It's more than just a head rest. It's really to help us protect ourselves against things like whiplash. So we're looking for proper adjustment and alignment of the headrest. Also, on the back of your checklist, you can see what that is. The typical distance is about 2.5 inches or less from touching the back of the head, so between the back of the head and the headrest, and then the hump of the head restraint should be around the mid-ear level to be protective. On item number 5, we're looking at the chest to steering wheel distance again, because often once we look at the head restraint and the adjustments of the seat belt or the safety belt, sometimes the individual may need to make adjustments in their seat. So we want to make sure that if they make any adjustments, that they're still in the correct alignment with their distance between the chest and the steering wheel. All adjustments, again, are optional, and the person who is in the car should be making the adjustments, not you. Item number 6 looks at line of sight, and we have a nice little card that we have that's 3 inches tall and 10 inches wide. So then we can use this as our measuring tool to make sure that everyone falls within the right categories. So the distance should be at least 3 inches above the steering column, and whenever this is addressed, this is typically where the seat is elevated or lowered. So then you have to make sure again that all of the adjustments, the distances are correct. So just remember, whenever you make one change in one place, there's going to be a change that's probably necessary in another place. We also observe posture, because that may be something that is influencing their ability to look over the steering wheel. Item number 7 is related to the gas brake position and how individuals access the gas and the brake. What we want to do is to identify, first of all, can they locate and depress the gas pedal. So we're looking at their strength, we're looking at their coordination, we're also looking at their speed. So we're having them to go back and forth between the different pedals, the gas and the brake. One of the things I've noticed is that some individuals wear certain shoes that are prohibitive to driving or that cause safety issues. One lady came in her house shoes, they were slip-ons, and they kept slipping. So just a minor suggestion, let's not wear slip-ons because that may cause a problem. One of the older guys came in with construction boots that were so heavy, he kept getting it stuck on the brake as opposed to actually stepping on the brake. So again, sometimes just looking at their access to the gas and the brake makes a difference as well. While we're doing this, we're also making sure that the brake lights are working properly. The mirror adjustments, with the mirror adjustments, one of the big things that we're looking at is to make sure that, one, they know how to use them and that they manage their blind spots. We look at the rear view mirrors, and we have individuals to stand behind to make sure that they're seeing the exact image of what's behind them in their rear view mirrors. Then we look at the side view mirrors in terms of them being able to not necessarily have to turn their head, but to use their side mirrors to see what's coming on the left and the right side. And then we look at the need for adjustments. How many of you know how to adjust your car for the blind spot? Okay, everybody's, okay, sit up, and your left side, this is your window to your car. So what you're going to do is you're going to lean over so that your head slightly touches the window. You're going to look at your rear view mirror on the left side, and you're going to bring it in so that you can see just the edge of your car. And then to do the right, the console in the middle, you lean that direction, you look to the mirror to the right, and you bring the mirror out until you can see just the edge of your car. It makes a difference. But the issue is that usually with older adults, they don't adjust very quickly if you make big changes, so you have to make small changes. You can't mess up the world. So, item number 9 is to look at neck mobility for blind spot checks, so that if the individual is able to, one, look over their left shoulder and then to look over their right shoulder to identify individuals or objects in their blind spot. So we want to also see if they're visually aware that they need to adapt and look for their blind spots. So we encourage them to do that and provide resources for them to work on that. Yes?
Can you just explain is that how to set the mirrors permanently so that you'll have less of a blind spot? Or is that what you do while you're driving?
Right, the question is, the demonstration that I just gave you is to how to set your mirrors permanently. So that you want to become accustomed to using that so that you only need to look in your mirrors really to see what's coming down the sides. And it really, if you try it out, it really works. The first time I did it, I thought, wow, I had such a greater peripheral vision just using my mirrors and not having to turn my head. Because what happens is when you adjust those mirrors that way, once you lose the car that is behind you in the rearview mirror, you see it in your side view mirror. And before you lose it in your side view mirror, you see it out of the corner of your eye. So it really does minimize that blind spot. But again, small incremental changes. So number 10 is ignition key or system. One of the things we've noticed is that some older adults don't really know some of the things about their cars. So, so we've had to teach them about different things, and this is one of those, where the ignition is, or how to adapt if you don't have your key and you have the little button instead. So we look at their ability to operate the key system, maneuver the key system, and control that. Okay, item number 11 are vehicle controls, and we want to know if they know where they are, if they can access them, and if they are functional or operational. We have, this is where the car technicians are really teamed up, so there's one in the back and one in the front, and one giving instructions. Then we look at the signals left and right, we look at the headlights, if they're on, if they know where the high beams are, if they can turn them on. We look at how dirty the lights are, because that makes a difference in terms of visibility. Emergency flashers, a lot of individuals don't know where their emergency flashers are, or the emergency park brake. So just helping them to locate those items are useful. Even wipers and adjusting wipers for the weather. And then turning of the steering wheel to the left and all the way to the right. And then the final thing is the horn, so that we make sure that everything is in working order. One of our best CarFit events, we had a retired mechanic who came and helped, and he did oil checks, tire checks, and other things for free after people went through the CarFit event. So he added a little extra to that. Then number 12 is the vehicle walk around. And this is where the occupational therapist or the driving rehabilitation specialist review all of the checklist items for those things, that are circled. They walk with the individual around the vehicle, and they're looking to see how the person moves out of the car, how they transfer. They're looking to see if they are aware of dents or dings. They are looking to see what their balance is like, if they're having to hold on to things. They're looking at coordination. They're looking at issues related to problem solving. And here's where we demonstrate a lot of the equipment. And then, of course, at the end, we give them resources and goodie bags. Part of what we do here is we sometimes give exercises, educations in our goodie bags. So whatever the problem is, we usually have something in our goodie bag that addresses it. We also contact people like various insurance companies who can give us hand grippers or keychains and things like that to add into the goodie bags, along with hand sanitizers and those sorts of things, so that the individuals feel as though they really have something. And one of the things that with the CarFit checklist, it is carbon, so we actually give a copy, the original copy, to the client, so that they have a list of everything that's been suggested and gone over. So I wanted to focus a little bit on some of the recommendations. We had equipment considerations and precautions. We do suggest adaptive equipment, but it's important to note that with some adaptive equipment, it may nullify the manufacturer's warranty. So you have to really be careful about what you give them in terms of adaptive equipment. If a person has decreased hand function, there's ability to do a key holder, a gripper, just to have them to be able to hold on to a gross grasp as opposed to a smaller grasp. If they have decreased hand function and flexibility and can't get the cap off, then we have a cap holder here. which is very handy. A lot of individuals like the extended seat belt grasp and the cushion because it adds comfort for those who have feel like it's really tight and they don't want to wear it across their shoulder because it hurts. That's why they wear it behind their back or something. So these tend to help with that. And this is probably one of the best gadgets that was developed. One of the things you'll see with this particular item, this is the handy bar. And the handy bar is about this big. You can kind of see it here. But this is very heavy. So in addition to it being a stabilizer, the person is able to put it in the hook of their car and push up on it to help get up if they have mobility problems. If they have balance problems, they can use it for stability. But if they're in an accident and can't get out, this is heavy enough to break the windows, which is really nice. And if you look on the inside here, there's a razor, so you can cut the seat belt. So it's kind of a trimodal tool, which is very, very handy. And my thought is if anyone is trying to rob you, it can come in handy there as well. If a person has limited neck mobility, we have extended rearview mirrors that can be easily put into the car. And this is one of those pieces of adaptive equipment that you have to really be careful about. Because it's not part of the seat, if you're using it, it may nullify the manufacturer's warranty in terms of safety. But for individuals who have problems with getting in and out of the car, these come in swivel. So basically, you have the flatter ones and the wider ones so that you can swing your legs out when you're trying to get out of the car. There are also wedges that go up and down for those individuals who can't see over the steering wheel. But again, when you use those wedges, you have to be careful because they may slide. So typically we'll put Dyson or something underneath so that they're stable. And that changes the height of the person's ability to reach the gas and the brake. It also changes the ability of the person to have clearance between the bottom of the steering wheel and their legs. So we have to be careful about that. And then for those with the limited leg mobility, where they're able to still drive with their right foot, but maybe their left leg is weak, they can use a leg lifter to get the leg in and out of the car. Then all-important goodie bag. On our goodie bags, we have a list of all of the adaptive equipment with places that you can get them, the estimated prices, the web links. We have sample equipment, again, whatever you can get in terms of giveaways that will be helpful. We have sample handouts. We have information about schedules for silver sneakers and different exercise programs that are useful for individuals who have limited mobility. We also have information about educational courses like with AAA and ARP, and of course the giveaways.